Hello, Espresso fans. Welcome to another exciting episode of Starknet Espresso, where we bring the latest updates and insights in the ecosystem. I'm your host, Uche. Today, we bring you a very special episode with Relend Network in focus. Joined by Vesu and Starknet Foundation, we discuss Relend's liquidity injection into the ecosystem and the positive impact on DeFi platforms. Relend is scaling liquidity, Vesu is lending, and Starknet is backing it. Let's get right into it.
Welcome everybody to Starknet Espresso. It's such a pleasure to have everyone here with us today. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on today is Relend Network and as to how it's improving the Starknet ecosystem. But before we go into it, I'd like everybody to kind of introduce themselves. I'm Uche, host of Starknet Espresso. Ben, maybe you go ahead.
Hey, I'm Benjamin. I'm a part of the growth team at the Starknet Foundation, and I primarily work on research and venture relations.
Oh, great. Happy to have you. Nils, you wanna?
Yeah, sure. Nils from Vesu, and we brought lending to Starknet. I'm happy to scale DeFi and Starknet together with Relend.
Great. Happy to have you here with us again. And then Eneo. Eneo, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
How's it going, guys? Eneo here, co-founder of Relend. Super excited to be chatting about how we're able to relend Ethereum's liquidity onto Starknet and how we can support the growth of Starknet DeFi with stablecoin supply.
Yeah, great to have you. So one of the things that actually prompted me to reach out to Eneo was, recently you guys made an announcement of the 15 million injection into Starknet ecosystem. And I'm like, oh, wow, who is Relend and what is Relend all about? So that made me reach out to you. And of course, you were gracious enough to, open to have this conversation. So I think it makes a lot more sense to start with you explaining what Relend is and what is Relend all about.
For sure. So maybe to just start off and lay some context, my co-founder and CTO, Yaron, he's been consulting risk for lending markets over the last couple of years. And one of the big issues that became quite evident is the lack of stablecoin supply in lending markets, specifically on chains which don't have ecosystems with $1 billion of TVL. So what ends up happening is a lot of the time chains are paying for sort of mercenary liquidity. This USDT, USDC comes into the lending market, but most of the time, once the incentives dry up, it is withdrawn and sort of moves to another ecosystem. We see a solution to this being the sort of collateralized debt position model with stablecoins, in that the credit supply should be able to scale along with the collateral assets. The issue we saw with CDPs is that the current architecture doesn't necessarily promote multi-chain strategies, in that Maker was sort of pioneered this and very much focused on Ethereum, was able to create a lot of value there. But each time they expand to new chains, they're sort of increasing risk for all DAI holders. And then you have a model like Liquidity, which also had solid adoption. But the issue there was that each time a new instance was deployed, they would have to start bootstrapping the price stability module from zero. So we took a bit of both of these designs, and in building Relend, we hold a global price stability module on Ethereum, which is in USDC. This is used to stabilize the RUSDC, which we deploy into lending markets on L2, in this case, RUSDC into Vesu. Now borrowers on Vesu, if they want to redeem to USDC, they have the option to bridge back to Ethereum and redeem directly for USDC. So that's sort of the out-of-the-box redemption that we provide chains. For the model to actually work and scale, we see that, or we hope that most of the borrowers will use the borrowed RUSDC on Starknet within the DeFi ecosystem. And this sort of unlocks capital that's currently sitting in the lending market. I think when we first started chatting with you, Nils, there was maybe $15-20 million of collateral, largely collateral assets in the lending market, and we sort of saw this as an opportunity to unlock some capital. Yeah, in terms of the go-to-market approach, we work closely with the lending market. We set up the vaults. RE7 was kind enough to help us curate there, and now our USDC is available to borrow at scale. We're sort of focusing now on how to get this new stablecoin adopted.
Oh, great. I think one of the questions people will be curious to ask, especially people that want to, invest into this new, what would you say, platform. How are we sure that the RUSDC is pegged one-to-one to USDC? What's the assurance on this?
Sure. So there's different backing for RUSDC. There's two ways that a user can obtain it. One would be to mint it through our price stability module. That's on Ethereum. They would take USDC, deposit it into our PSM, and receive our USDC-Stark on the other side. They can then bridge that over to Starknet. So in that sort of scenario, it's very clear to see the one-to-one backing. Users can also mint our USDC in the borrow transaction by providing collateral on Vesu. So if someone was to come into Vesu, provide some Stark tokens, they could borrow our USDC against their Stark, which then provides backing for the stablecoin. So there's those two sort of methods for redemptions. Then obviously we've set up a liquidity pool on Starknet where users can also just swap directly between USDC and our USDC. Long term, we think that the peg will be maintained largely through the liquidity on the Starknet DEX, as well as the price stability module. But with a CDP stablecoin, there's no real way that it can depeg upwards, because if the price of our USDC is above 1, a user is incentivized to mint it with 1 USDC and then sell it for above 1 USDC. Similarly, if the price is going downwards, it's a debt asset, so it's always redeemable for the underlying collateral at 1-to-1. So then you're able to redeem for more collateral. Those are sort of the mechanisms in play here. We haven't seen that users want to redeem. Most of the borrowers have gone straight into providing liquidity on Starknet.
Oh, great. I was going to your documentation, and one of the things that I saw which caught my attention to a large extent was the idea of having a localized price liquidity, price stability module for HL2. And this is something I find remarkable, and it's because too, I was having a conversation with Nils recently, and something we talked about was, isolated risks. And I think that's an approach that you guys have taken in terms of, this local price stability model for HL2. Can you walk us through that aspect?
For sure. So we're really happy to have deployed our first instance on Starknet and sort of look forward to growing adoption there. Long term, we want to deploy our USDC as broadly as possible onto as many different chains. The issue if we went with sort of one price stability module is that if there's a hack on, let's say, Swell network or X chain, whichever chain, then the liquidity backing the Starknet USDC could be removed. So we decided to rather separate price stability modules. Now we top up, let's say we see that the Starknet price stability module is running low on USDC liquidity, but we see that there's been no bad actors, Vesu's still sound, the DEX is still sound, everything's good, then we will top it up from our global price stability module. However, if we see that there's an instance or some sort of dodgy behavior on, let's say, deployment number 4, we will not top up liquidity in that module because it would affect the peg of our USDC Stark.
Yeah, great. I mean, one of the reasons why this caught my attention exactly was because of my conversation with Nils the last time. And I think, Nils, maybe you can throw a little bit light on how you see this approach, just because we've talked about something relating to it before.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can indeed draw parallels to Vesu's design, right? Which is also, fully isolated risks in different lending pools. And so here you have something similar. You kind of isolate risks, let's say across different chains or L2s, where Relend is scaling the stablecoin to. And I think that's a very important design as you kind of intend to scale into different ecosystems. But you know, and you're aware of all the different risks that you have on those different ecosystems. And so it's kind of similar, you know, with Vesu, where we wanted to keep the lending protocol open and be able to scale with demand, be able to scale with new assets that appear on Starknet, and not limit us with kind of a central risk management, right? And so this is really very similar to kind of how we isolate risk within lending pools. And ultimately, you know, it just allows us now to, you know, within a week or so, I mean, we started talking and chatting about Relend and the stablecoin and the possibility of launching a pool on Vesu a while back. But just the process of planning the pool and parameters to launching it is very short, because you have exactly these isolated lending pools where whatever we do here, right, and Relend and RUSDC is very sound and stable, given how it's been designed. And but whatever happens to it and this lending pool, it doesn't affect anyone else on Vesu's platform. And so this ultimately just allows us and allows Relend to scale faster.
I think one thing I find very remarkable is that it seems like this concept is cutting across all platforms, you know, because it feels like this is a new approach towards things. So I was looking at MakerDAO. MakerDAO has a centralized pool for everyone, and it seems like Relend is taking a different approach to it. Yeah.
I maybe just wanted to chime in there and say, as like we sort of looking at lots of different lending market models on all these chains. The primary lending markets is different, so it's great to have isolated risk with Vesu. It helps us a lot, also just in terms of managing the collateral assets and just having flexibility there, where we don't have to go through like a 2-week governance process or anything to list a new asset. It's fairly straightforward, plug and play.
Oh, great. I look at, because I think what you guys have here is a very robust infrastructure, and I think it's easy to look at it and see the success of it now. But I imagine throughout the building phase or the process towards getting here, there's been a couple of challenges along the road. Can you talk about those challenges and how you've addressed those challenges?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say one of our main challenges was getting buy-in from partners initially. Starknet we were lucky enough to get bandwidth from the team to sort of actually dive in and understand a lot of the time, because it's sort of a new model. We're not able to cross that initial understanding barrier, and then sort of once we do get past that, most of the time the conversation sort of moves on positively. But definitely just appreciate the Starknet team taking the time to dive into what we're doing. We were also pre-audit when we opened a lot of these conversations. So guys it's fair enough, pre-audit, you don't want to commit to anything. So after the audits, things were able to move along a lot quicker. I would say one of the challenges that we thought was going to be a big issue, but we ended up managing to get past it, was just attracting initial liquidity on Ethereum to be able to support these RUSDC instances. We've been offering pretty competitive yield there, and sort of are lucky enough to be on a platform where there is a lot of liquidity moving around. So that filled up quite naturally, and then sort of help push on the conversations because we have some form of liquidity backing. Otherwise, it's for us, it's just figuring things out for the first time. Like, over time, we hope to slowly have more of a plug and play playbook, especially on the adoption side. That's largely why we're having the conversation, because we did the initial deployment, the funds are there available to borrow, there's incentives to be earned on the DEX, and now it's like, how do we actually get through to users who could potentially want to leverage these strategies? And
great.
yeah, we've been pushing there slowly, but it's not. I think that's part of the puzzle that hasn't yet been figured out.
If I can just jump in here, right? I mean, you mentioned, right, kind of the initial barrier to understand RUSDC and the new stablecoin. I mean, everyone's of course very cautious, and that's the right approach with new assets. And I think it's just very important to understand again how RUSDC works, right? And how it allows you to actually, let's say, scale fast into different chains and ecosystems without having to build new infrastructure, new contracts, heavy contracts on all those chains. Effectively on Starknet, for instance, you just need an ERC20 token, right, that can be bridged from mainnet. And then the actual collateralization of that token of RUSDC on Starknet happens in Vesu. So effectively Vesu, because you can borrow RUSDC on Vesu by providing collateral there, over collateralizing it. People actually collateralize the stablecoin, almost like minted on Vesu itself without you having to build heavy infrastructure on all of those chains, right? So that reduces your cost. It means users can use the existing infrastructure that they trust and that has been working, in the past. And so that just goes back to, how it allows RUSDC to scale, I think, much faster and with lower risk into all those different L2s.
Great. Thank you, Nils, for chipping that into. Just before we go into the impact it's having on different protocols, I think, Ben, maybe you should, what do you think about this development in terms of Starknet perspective?
Yeah, I think it's super important to have as many different stablecoins as possible in Starknet. Like just being able to acquire that TVL and potential users from that is super important. I do want to talk a little bit about like kind of our plan for getting more users in 2025. I know like that gets brought up a lot on social media and different platforms about like, oh, Starknet has 8 users or Starknet doesn't really have a good plan. I think it's important to kind of say that that's incorrect and that we do have a pretty long-term strategy for acquiring more users and acquiring more TVL and capital to be used in platforms like Vesu and Relend. And so I want to like just do like a quick little dive into our grants program and also some of the programs we have going live, specifically related to Bitcoin. And I know this is kind of just like shilling our programs, but I think it's important for people to understand that. And so the first kind of part of this is the grants we have. And I'm definitely biased in saying this, but I think that our grants program is one of the best in crypto. And we basically offer support from the start for any platform looking to build on Starknet with monetary support, audit support, social support, just anything we can do. And once we have enough platforms built from that, we have a lot of incentive programs going live within the next 6 months, specifically targeted around Bitcoin users. And while that doesn't necessarily benefit Relend directly, it should, because we can have more more potential collateral on Vesu that can lead to more RUSDC being borrowed. And so kind of our plan on growing Relend and similar platforms is that if we can get enough collateral and if we can get enough capital on Starknet and on Vesu in particular, we should see RUSDC borrows continue to go up and increase liquidity on Akubo. So we're definitely excited by the prospects of Relend, and we're optimistic.
Oh, great. Just to mention, one of the, I think the Founders Bootcamp is going on currently, and it's a platform that also encourages, platforms to come on Starknet. So yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said and how that is impacting the ecosystem in general. I'd like to shift a bit to the impact of Relend directly on platforms like Vesu. So Nils, maybe you tell us what the impact of this liquidity injection into the ecosystem has meant for Vesu going forward.
Well, it's quite simple, right? The impact has been that we have 15 million more stablecoin liquidity on Vesu, and that's a significant number for the Starknet ecosystem. It's also just the beginning, as kind of demand and borrowing grows on Vesu. This supply can scale up pretty flexibly given the design of RUSDC. And what this ultimately means is more liquidity for users in DeFi to execute their strategies on. And as we know, as Ben also mentioned before, stablecoin liquidity is one of the most important liquidity in any ecosystem. It allows users, to execute all sorts of strategies. Starknet has a very interesting program to bootstrap markets in place already, which is called DeFi Spring, which at the moment actually allows for stable coins, or pure stablecoin exposure strategies, yielding double-digit APYs, 18%. If you want to be correct on Ekubo, actually, the biggest DEX. So there is a big will from everyone involved here on Starknet to bootstrap and grow DeFi markets. And that will be complemented with new initiatives and also new features, new products that actually launch on Starknet that ultimately allow users to execute all sorts of strategies on Starknet with reasonable cost and high security.
Great. I mean, we've talked about the good sides of what this means, but I'm tempted to ask a little bit question, and because I'm looking at the market with what has happened recently, especially with the trade war going on around the world, and I'm thinking in the case of where you have, what would you say, a sharp drop in collateral prices, what does that mean for users people that are collateralized on, let's say, Ethereum for an extent, let's say Ethereum drops 20% in one day, that's going to have a huge impact on people borrowing and lending. How do you see that playing out in terms of Relend generally?
Well, so it's like it works on all lending markets, and like in any lending pool on Vesu, if collateral prices drop at some point, hopefully not for users because they are safe enough in terms of their health factors, but at some point collateral gets liquidated or positions get liquidated, right? And what this ultimately just means is that Relend RUSDC is bought on the market to be repaid on Vesu. This kind of shrinks RUSDC in circulation, if you want, at least on Starknet. So this is just how we expect liquidations to work in all lending markets. It doesn't really make a big difference whether it's RUSDC or whether it's USDC. It's exactly the same process. Of course, what's important is to have enough liquidity for those scenarios, right? Have enough liquidity on Starknet. And also, in particular, on Stark now on Ekubo, because many liquidations are actually processed through Ekubo, and that's just again why Starknet has a very interesting incentive program in place, where you can earn what I mentioned before, 18% APY by supplying RUSDC, USDC liquidity on Ekubo. Because we all know this is critical in times like these when prices drop. But just want to mention it's the the same process as we know it from other stable coins. It doesn't really make a difference for our USDC.
Great. Eneo, do you want to throw a little light on that, sir?
Yeah, for sure. So this is actually an interesting problem that we've started working on a solution for. Obviously, to have some liquidity that we deploy there initially is all right, but over time we should be able to also tap into existing USDC liquidity and just route it into our USDC for the payback, because it's just like one-to-one. But going back to, I think, the impact on Starknet question, especially when you're saying sort of big push to bring more Bitcoin to Starknet. There's really this capital unlock that we want to be able to provide and it's just the beginning now with like one pool set up. But our long-term goal and benefit is really that it gets adopted quite broadly as the sort of go-to stablecoin on Starknet. The reason for this being is that there will be more RUSDC available for users to leverage than there will be USDC or USDT. And if, say, for example, we've also seen some of the other Bitcoin focused networks, they're sitting with $200-300 million of Bitcoin in their lending market, but there's no real assets there for users to be able to leverage. So excited that we are positioned early, and there is this push coming, so we can unlock some of that capital.
One question I was going to ask is, it's my understanding you are on Starknet. Are there other L2 protocols that you're currently providing liquidity for?
We're in early. We're not as live as we are on Starknet anywhere else, to put it that way. But we've just sort of finalizing things on Swell and on Hemi, and then we've engaged with the TAC pre-deposit campaign. So it's a couple.
Great. Perhaps maybe injecting more liquidity on Starknet will be a good idea.
Yeah, we would love to. If we see that there's a couple million borrowed, we'll just top it up. But it's how do we get that first couple million borrowed? Do we need to set up sort of one-on-one agreements with LPs and walk them through it sort of personally, or are we able to get through to them through just sharing the information on socials? I think for us that's really key focus at the moment.
Great. Nils, back to you, because our last session ended quite, I would say, abruptly in some sense, and I was going to go get into the BTC-Fi aspect of things before that call ended. Maybe this is an opportunity to tell us a little bit about that approach and what Vesu is doing currently with respect to that.
Yeah, sure. I think what the very basis of BTC-Fi means for us is to have, in a first iteration, to have BTC like assets, so wrapped BTC assets on Starknet. At the moment, there is WBTC, of course, but we'll have different flavors of BTC, which are bridged to Starknet very soon, and that just builds the basis for all sorts of BTC focused strategies. If you look at kind of the playing field, for BTC-Fi, that kind of started already on Starknet. So, for instance, just last week, I think Bravos announced kind of a full BTC exposed strategies where Bitcoin holders on Bitcoin, actually. So that's not WBTC holders on Starknet. That's Bitcoin holders on Bitcoin network. They can supply Bitcoin from Starknet into yield strategy that's ultimately executed on Starknet, right? And so that's kind of a one-click, a one-transaction experience for Bitcoiners, which is live now already. They supply into the strategy through Bravos and start earning. And when I say full Bitcoin kind of exposure, that means whatever they earn is converted into more Bitcoin. So ultimately, they just see their Bitcoin balance go up, which is, if I'm a Bitcoiner, that's what I want, right? I don't want to hold any other exposures. That's what I believe in, right? And so BTC-Fi, it's not a future thing that started already. We kicked kind of BTC-Fi off on Starknet already, and we'll just get to see many more such strategies being built. I'm in contact with number of teams who are building things around that, and liquidity in stablecoins or also in Bitcoin actually, and lending are just some kind of basic elements of many of almost most BTC-Fi strategies. And we are here to help and facilitate all of that. And again, I think I just want to highlight again the benefit of having a permissionless lending market where everyone can just come in and create new lending pools how they need that. And Vesu, the Vesu team, there is no one you actually have to ask to do that. You just come and building new strategies, and that's how I think we'll be able to arrive at a very cool BTC-fi UX much faster than if we had to go through weeks of governance for each of those things.
I think I was going to highlight the governance-free approach that Vesu is taking. I think that makes things a lot more. I think basically that's how decentralized platforms should operate, and I think Vesu is taking the lead on that.
That's the basic idea of decentralization, right? There is no central control in a system anymore, right? And so that's our vision, and that's how we think DeFi can grow much more, and DeFi and Starknet can grow much more. And as always, and just going back to the Bravos example, I mentioned the one transaction UX there. That's, I think, what we at Vesu, but Starknet overall, UX is one of the key elements that we want to actually improve for DeFi and for DeFi users.
Great. Back to Eneo, what's the future for Relend going forward?
So for Starknet specifically, I mean, the future would ideally be adoption. So we're going to keep pushing to integrate with more protocols, to set up more pools, to work with other protocols, that like newer protocols that have incentives. It's obviously quite an easy way to get adoption. Sometimes the points like equate to more hype than hard incentives. And then more broadly, we really focused on increasing the yield for our LPs on Ethereum. So every time our USDC is borrowed on Starknet, some of that's routed back to them, which makes our APY there more competitive. So just to grow the amount of USDC there, which then allows us to in turn supply more USDC to Vesu and into other deployments. I mean, this year we really focused on deploying onto, let's say, like we're on 3, so sort of want to do another 3 to 5 this coming quarter, and then again and again. So just deploying our USDC more broadly. Then another thing that we've thought about internally, we haven't started pushing this because the sort of easiest problem to identify is the lack of stablecoin liquidity. But as Nils mentioned, a similar thing starts to happen with Bitcoin liquidity or with whatever else. So there is a future where we deploy our BTC with a similar design, and able to facilitate sort of supplying BTC. But yeah, for the coming months, I would say our main focus is just going to be on shipping more our USDC deployments and then getting adoption where we're already live.
Great. So I'm thinking, I hope I haven't covered everything, but are there other things that you'd like to share with us about Relend that we haven't talked about throughout the episode?
I would say the one thing in your little in the questions beforehand, just in terms of like what's one thing about this collaboration that now makes Starknet offers sort of more attractive than Optimism or Arbitrum, and I was just looking into if you had to implement the same strategies there in terms of borrowing, like on Optimism, on Aave you can borrow USDC at 4%, you can borrow SUSD at 4.7%, and then you can LP that pair to get around 11.5%, which is maybe 2-3% profit. Similar thing with Aave, like USDC 4%, USDT 4% to borrow, and then you LP that pair and you're earning 2.7%. And then, just to reiterate, the Starknet strategy is borrow USDC at 0.17%, borrow USDC at 2%, and then LP the pair at 18%. It's a massive difference. So just that point.
Great. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that would want to forgo that, or would you say benefits on Relend and Starknet. So It's a massive gain for anyone that taps into it. On closing, Niels, what do you think? Just before we round things up.
Yeah, Eneo, he already mentioned kind of the numbers part, where it just is very attractive to actually execute these strategies on Starknet now. So I want to make another point, which highlights something about this collaboration between Relend, Vesu, and Starknet. We're actually all working, on scaling certain things, right? Starknet scales Ethereum and Bitcoin in the future, brings lower transaction cost, brings higher throughput to networks, in particular Bitcoin, which hasn't actually seen that before, right? So scaling the chain itself. Then Relend scales stablecoin liquidity ultimately in a very I think smart way. Just want to highlight again, our USDC is redeemable for USDC, so ultimately should enable a very strong pack for our USDC on Starknet. Scaling up liquidity supply means, scaling up all sorts of DeFi strategies. So you can execute that strategy that Eneo just mentioned, not just with 100K or so. There is actually still 14 point something million of liquidity left that you can use, and that can be topped up. So, scaling that up, and then with Vesu, ultimately one of the big goals of being permissionless without central governance is scaling up lending. It makes many lending use cases much easier to implement. It enables anyone to just, bootstrap their own pool for their specific strategy very easily, without a lot of, politics around it, or without having to build your own lending market, audit all of that. So I think we all want the same thing, and we are scaling DeFi on Starknet together.
Great. I mean, it's been recently. I mean, everything that's been happening on Starknet has been all positives, and I'm just happy to be in the middle of it, and having to talk to everybody that's part of this movement, and it's super exciting times. Eneo, I just wanted to. I think I forgot to ask before. Apart from Vesu, are there any other platforms on Starknet that have implemented their USDC in the market?
At the moment, it's just Vesu, and then we're working with Ekubo on the DEX side. We very much open to integrating with more protocols. If you are building something on Starknet looking for stablecoin liquidity, let's have a chat. But yeah, at the moment it's primarily Vesu and then liquidity on Ekubo.
Okay, so let's say, for example, people that are watching this, that will be watching this show, and they are wondering how to get in contact with you, especially to implement this approach. How do they get to you?
Just drop a message on the Vesu Telegram group. I'm there. I'm on it. No, I'm joking. You can reach out to us on our Telegram group. You can just tag me at Eneo Hollenbach, first name, second name. That's my TG.
Okay. Ben, to wrap things up, I mean, we've seen everything that these protocols are doing basically on Starknet. How does this align in general with Starknet's vision for 2025? Maybe you can throw a little bit light on this to wrap things up.
Yeah, so I think the ethos behind Relend and Vesu in a way is kind of to create this open economy that isn't restricted by anything, and I think that's really, really advanced by Vesu's design, where you can have any pool with any type of collateral and any type of borrowing, and then it's further advanced by Relend, rehypothecating the USDC to be used and generate additional yield. And I think that ties into what Starknet is trying to build, which is and the way I kind of express this is almost we're going to be a dual composability layer between Bitcoin and Ethereum, there's lots of rollups that want to be Bitcoin rollups, and there's lots of Ethereum rollups. But as far as I know, we're really the only rollup that's making progress towards settling on Ethereum and Bitcoin. And there's real benefits to that because Bitcoin is the hardest collateral in the world, and this is heavily debated, but Ethereum at least is trying to be a decent form of money. And so when you have the hardest collateral in the world interacting with money in a sense, and you have that in trustless fashion, it's super powerful in an economy that isn't restricted by anything. And so if we can have the systems like Relend and Vesu pushing that forth while having trustless access to a lot of different collateral and a lot of different types of money, mainly being Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think that opens the boundaries for what we can accomplish in 2025 and much, much later on as well.
Great, happy to hear that. Nils, I give you one more opportunity to, wrap things up on your end.
I just want to, finish on what Ben said. 2025 is the year where we will be scaling Bitcoin and Starknet overall, and that requires all sorts of ecosystem players. Starknet, of course, as the basis, but then a stablecoin, liquidity, lending primitives, and DEX primitives, which we have, I think, some good players already, but it requires much more. And so everyone interested in building in a growing ecosystem, in an ecosystem that's just not just looking for kind of the next hype, the next months, but building long term and building the new economy, like Ben said. Please reach out anywhere to any of the teams, to us or Starknet. I think what Starknet is very good at is just onboarding or being open to new builders in the space.
I just want to say a big thank you to everybody, Nils, Ben, Eneo. It's been such a pleasure and an insightful session that we've had. And hopefully we can do more of this in the future, but I'm super, super happy that we're able to make this happen.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This was really enjoyable.
What a session. Thank you so much, Eneo, Nils, and Ben, for your insights on today's episode. It was a pleasure to have you guys on the show. To everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed as much as we did. To catch future episodes of Starknet Espresso, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts in the comment section. Until next time, keep learning, keep innovating, and don't forget, the future is decentralized. Bye for now.